So I have just stumbled across a video on TikTok, and I thought it might be useful to break down and cover and share with you as well. One of the things that stood out to me was in the comments, and this isn't the only post that I've seen like this, and obviously I know predominantly there's there's mainly social workers in this community at the moment. Was that the comments were social workers don't care. That's the message that's been sent out to the people that are needing your help and support. And that upsets me, it worries me, because when people feel like that, they're not going to open up to you. Now, a couple of things stood out with what he said was, I want you to notice, and we'll discuss it after I've played it, what he learned growing up and what stayed with him. And what response from the social worker reinforced that belief. So I'm just going to play it for you now.
As a very young child, a social worker sat me down in a room and told me everything I said to her was confidential, and I believed her. I didn't even know what a social worker was at that age. All I knew was what was happening to me at home. There was domestic abuse in my house growing up. My mum was the one responsible, and my dad was often away with work, which left my mum and I alone a lot of the time. And at some point, social services got involved. A social worker came to the house. She sat me down separately from my mum and told me that I could tell her everything, that none of it would make its way back to her. Even as a child, I understood that telling people what was happening to me came with consequences. I had no trust in anyone at that age, but she assured me, and I was young, so I believed her. So I told her what was happening to me. She left the room, she fed it straight back to my mum, and what followed was exactly what I was afraid of. And what that moment did to me beyond the immediate situation was take whatever was left of my ability to trust people and dismantle it completely. I was a child, and I had just learned that the people who are supposed to protect you don't always do that. That even when someone looks you straight in the eye and tells you that you're safe, you might not be. I'm not sharing this for sympathy, I'm sharing it because that moment shaped beliefs about trust and about safety, about whether the world was something that I could rely on, that followed me into adult life without me even realizing it. And it took me a long time to realize that those beliefs weren't the truth. It was just the only conclusion a child could come to given what he experienced. The beliefs that are hardest to change are the ones that were formed when you were too young to know you were forming them.
So one thing that stood out to me was, if I glance over, it's only because I've made a few notes, only to make sure I stay on track. So what stood out for me was the fact that he knew. Now, whether this was verbally expressed or whether this was just a deep inner knowing, he knew that if he exposed what was happening behind closed doors, there would be consequences. And the consequences would be serious. That's something so many children living in a harmful home learn. Whether it's ever said to them out loud, like I said, or whether it is just an inner knowing, they learn what happens behind closed doors must stay behind closed doors. They learn to wear a mask. They learn to perform for the outside world. They learn to protect the family image, their pack, at all costs. They learn that survival means silence. And that stays with them. That's something that I know firsthand. I have firsthand lived experience of this. Because for a child speaking out, it is not about telling the truth. It can feel like risking everything. Your home, your sense of belonging, your connection to the only people you've ever known, your connection to your pack. So even if that environment is harmful, it is still what they associate with connection, belonging, and love. It is still what your nervous system knows. And anything outside of that represents danger. So when a child feels safe enough to open up to any professional or a friend or family member or anybody at all, trust matters a lot. So if you break that trust, you're never going to get it back. For any child, and some adults, by telling you and exposing what's happening behind closed doors, they are seeing you as a protector. Same with police, same with health professionals, educational professionals to a different extent. They see those roles come with protector status, or should do. So a child who sees those professionals as the person who can make everything better and doesn't make everything better, suddenly that professional is now the enemy. They're not the protector, now they are now the enemy. And actually that has shaped it for every single professional moving forward. They now have their guard up and their defences up. So what did that child actually want you to do? They wanted you to wave a magic wand and make everything better. Even me as an adult, when I first reached out to the police, I didn't want him arrested because I knew that came with consequences. I knew the consequences would be serious if they didn't have enough evidence to hold him accountable. So I just said, I just want the abuse to stop. I expected them to wave a magic wand and make everything better. Naively, maybe. So if an adult can do that, and I am not unique, this is the same for many, many adults who experience domestic abuse and do reach out and then are withholding and minimising certain elements. They're hoping for a magic wand. So the same applies to children. If they let their guard down and you build enough rapport up and you make their nervous system feel safe, you have a responsibility to respect that trust that they have put in you. And it's important to be honest with them about depending on what they disclose will depend on whether you need to take certain steps. But if they explicitly say they do not want something fed back to their mum, the parents, that they are the source of the disclosure of the information that the local authorities have, as an example, and you break that trust, they feel like the outcast of their pack. So now they have no sense of belonging. You've robbed them of that of what they associate with belonging by breaking that trust. So it's really important to be brutally honest with anybody that you engage with, and also keep them in the loop. Uncertainty and the unknown is one of the hardest things in the world. And certainly one of the worst things is to be caught off guard. So you have to be brutally honest with people. If they disclose, and they've disclosed something that you now you know professionally, for me to risk manage this situation for you, I'm going to have to take X, Y, and Z steps. Communicate that, particularly with children. You have to communicate that, because if you break that trust and you have something come out of left field, that's going to hit them far harder than if you sit them down initially and say, right, now I need to now what you've told me is really serious. I now need to do X, Y, and Z. But I will not tell your mom or your dad that you are the one that's told us about it. For the time being. And if it comes a time where they have to be told, feed that information back. You tell them first. You don't go and do it without discussing it with them first. The nervous system and the brain likes to be prepared. Forewarned is forearmed. That's why you'll notice with a lot of victims of domestic abuse, they are constantly badgering you for updates and information, because forewarned is forearmed. The other alternative that they do is to bury their heads in the sand. Well, we don't want them to bury their heads in the sand. So if they are badgering you for answers, you give them the answers, because there's no middle ground with somebody who is in a place of uncertainty, and that represents the greatest danger of all. That's far more dangerous than the war zone that you're trying to safely navigate them out of. So those are the two things that really stood out for me. So speaking out does come with consequences, and that can be learned from a very, very young age.